begins with a rant. Well, hopefully it begins with the story of a rant. So I was in there making Granddad's bed, and this thought came to me that said, all of our education growing up was particularly and systematically designed to take away our own ways of knowing. And I was thinking in particular about the fact that we were told not to trust instinct or intuition. That instinct, that's for the lower animals, and we humans, we learn stuff instead. And intuition, intuition is old wives' tale, pretty much. We now have science, and we don't need intuition. This was what we were told, and so I was thinking about that, and the rant continued in my mind, as rants will do. As I moved along through other things, it gathered evidence and momentum. And I was thinking, well, look what they tell you in school. They tell you don't move, don't touch, don't try things on your own, listen to what the teacher says, and don't speak except according to the particular lines that the teacher has laid out. And I was thinking, how could we then know anything? And then, in fact, that the things that they would teach us, and we had no means of knowing whether they were true or not, that they were all sorts of horrible things that were untrue that we were taught to believe. But I have to stop the rant to tell you that the reason, and I was aware of this at the time, the reason that I was having this rant is that I have recently come into a strong awareness of these other ways of knowing. Intuition and instinct and movement and touch, I think, are ways that bring instinct and intuition forth. And so I have to express gratitude to this community for that, because it was in this community, well, there was leading up to it certainly, but it really came into its own here with dance. And I want to, in this sharing, particularly talk about touch. I grew up in a non-touching family, and although I gained some comfort with touch in intimate relations, and especially with my relationship with Edward, I was still really awkward in all social situations. And I longed to be comfortable. I longed to be able to go up to somebody and hug them, but I would get all stuck in the sense of propriety and would they want that and all these kinds of things, and I would not do it. And I so envied the people who could, who I felt could move as they wanted to move. But through the dance community and through a series of revelations that are mostly talked about in this book, that's what this book, Infinite Permission, is about, I came to a place of comfort with touch. And really not even so much the kind of incremental thing that I worked on over all the years, but really a complete place to where it was 100% transformed. And what I realized upon that is that how very much I need it, and how very much I think we all need it. And this poem is called Touch Hunger. It's not published yet, but it may be in my next book, which may be called Being One, Being Two. Touch Hunger. Now that I know about my own touch hunger, I see touch hunger everywhere I look. Faces longing to be stroked, bodies leaning out toward one another. The boy whose agitated energy moved him in an oscillating 8, just like my daughter moved when she was small and needed to be held. We live in an emaciated state, not knowing what we crave, how to relate. Our bodies stick like prickly, stiff from starving for our basic daily touch, caged off by fears, by norms, by talk of sin. We need to open gates and so begin to feed each other's hunger so we can fill up our souls and so be whole again. Hear, hear.
It is resolved.
So once the way of knowing that it's in touch becomes activated, I find that it's a much more finely calibrated way of knowing than the things we were taught to replace it, which basically were measurement, mechanization, and calculation. I was reading a book that's called From the Wood-Fired Oven, and it was about baking bread in ovens that you built and fired in the backyard or whatever. And they talked in there about how bakers, artists and bakers, know so much about the dough with their hands. They can tell, it's not like a hook making it, but they can tell exactly what kind of motion the bread needs, and they can tell exactly what the things are that have to do with the particulars of this situation right now. There's variations in humidity and in temperature and in the particular ingredients that are in there, and they can, through feel, tell exactly what it needs and give it what it needs. And I also read about how they can stick their arm into the oven and from that feel not just the temperature the way a thermometer would measure it, but they can tell how the temperature is different in different parts of the oven, and they can tell the arc of the heat, because it will be a certain heat for a certain time and then it will slowly cool down, so they can put the bread in at just the right time in just the right place, so that it comes out perfect even though the bread itself is different every time. So it's not a recipe, it's a wisdom of touch. And when I was back on my rant and I was thinking about this, I was thinking there's whole areas of physics that I don't know and I should. Things having to do with heat transfer and conduction and what are those, thermal mass and insulation. And that these things, I should know them not through having studied physics with calculations, but my body should know them. They should know from paying attention and from continuing to notice and learn, so that I would develop what might be called intuition, or it might be called the mastery of touch. And it used to be that everybody would get this as part of their career. They would have some kind of a craft or a thing that they did that would entail this kind of touch wisdom. But you know, our parents were told, oh, why do things by hand when you can be smart and let a machine do it for you? And during our lifetime, the power of the almighty dollar has rendered most livelihoods that rely on the wisdom of touch infeasible. So we can be in a state in our whole life of being quite lost in terms of how we know what is what. And from my book, Revolution, this is the language of touch. The language of touch is as broad and as nuanced as any language, and it can be learned and passed from one to another like any language. And like many native languages, it has been forbidden. It has been almost lost, but it can be reclaimed, pieced together and reconstructed from the snatches of what we remember, from what some gifted few embody. It can spread like oil. It can multiply till everybody knows how to speak it, and it can sing in rich and glorious harmony, shared, rising, rebellious, overthrowing the long enforced silence that kept us boxed off from each other. We will sing this language of touch until everyone hears it and finds the way home. So another thing about the language of touch, as you begin to work with it, is that this use of touch wisdom is so satisfying. It is the being alive. It's the way that we tune in with the everything of the universe, and it just feels like what we're here for. This is what we want. I also think that the language of touch, or the wisdom of touch, is transferable. If you know how to give a piece of bread or dough what it needs, you probably can also know how to comfort a child. If you know how to put your hand in the oven and gauge the right temperature, you probably also know how to hold with a friend who's upset, how to hold the silence just in the right way, and wait until the right time for the right words to come out. And when relationships are well grounded in touch, and you have that touch wisdom, then you may get beyond some of the difficulties that we sometimes have in relationships when we try to build them with words, some of the sort of scrabbling that goes on. And this poem, Touching, is about that. Here is the spiral that goes down all the way in, curling with you the way you want to curl, infinitely deep until it touches that point of satisfaction where you wanted to be touched. Here's the holding with you that doesn't care what you said, that lets the hurled words fall off like froth and moves along the deeper layers, the need beneath the words, beneath the thought. We have all the time in the world, all the time to be comprehended down to the core, all the time to let exquisite balance assert itself, in which we can unite in silent, gyroscopic spin.
Fractalicious.
So, as I started to experience some of that, I found a new paradigm for relationships. I used to kind of think that when people would have an interaction, that it would be like me coming with my stuff and you coming with your stuff, and stuff might be opinions, it might be tastes, it might be activities that we like, and then we engage in this kind of thing of trying to share our stuff with each other, and it's like, it's hard because, you know, you're trying to hold your stuff and share your stuff like this, and things get dropped, and I might feel successful if I feel like I succeeded in getting you to take one of my things before I go. My new paradigm of relationships is to come empty, but with infinity, knowing that we all have infinity at our backs, and to come empty and open, and being aware that at the point of touch, the needed gifts from the infinity will come forth from both of us and rise up and be the gifts, and we both will come away with them. We'll both be able to have them without having felt that they came from me, or they came from you, or that they were exchanged. They were just a gift of the universe because we did this magical thing. This poem, it's called Touched. In feeding, we are fed. In meeting, we are met. In every act of willingness to come forth empty to the touch point, we are filled. The fountain rises bubbling from the awe-struck rock. The flames burst out from the friction's spark. The inspiration rushes suddenly and steadily into the open place, prepared by humbleness for great paths of wind sweeping into the deepest chambers, touching the quick, igniting swift life fire within.